It's really a pleasure to be here. I had hoped to be able to stay a little bit longer, but I unfortunately have to go straight after my presentation here, as the European Commission is keeping us busy replying to the new regulation in regards to motors and drives. This morning I would like to tell you a little bit about what CEMEP is, and also a little bit about the challenges that we see ahead of us, and they are not few. We have also heard this morning in the two previous presentations pretty much the same thing. The world is going to change. We have a lot of ambitious objectives ahead of us in regards to energy savings, and those are of course high on the agenda of CEMEP as well. CEMEP is based on its members, and the members are the national organizations taking care of the manufacturers of motors, drives and UPSs. I'll get back to that a little later. But all these names up here are representing the national organizations that are members of CEMEP. I also have to stress here that CEMEP is not a European Union organization, it is a European organization, so we would like more names to pop up here. Switzerland, for instance. About 30 companies are represented by these national organizations. We saw also earlier that Siemens, ABB are popping up in all statistics when it comes to motor manufacturing worldwide, and they of course are both represented by national organizations in the CEMEP as well. The total business represented by the CEMEP is round about, well, somewhere between 20 and 25 billion, could even be more. And we believe that there is 200,000 employees directly involved in CEMEP represented products. It is a little bit difficult to keep track on the numbers, because all of these, or most of the companies manufacturing motors in Europe are also manufacturing motors in many other places on the globe. So if we were taking the total manufacturing of motors and drives for the and UPSs for the companies involved, the figures would become much, much bigger. We have a representation of low voltage motors, high voltage motors, variable speed drives and uninterruptible power supplies. This is what is organized in CEMEP, and this is the industries that we are representing in CEMEP. The vision is, of course, to represent those business in whatever errand they might have. It is a lot these days. If you look at what we have been doing in the past, it has had a lot to do with legislation around drives and motors. And if you're looking ahead, it will be that again, but a lot more challenges on top. We have an organization where, again, the national organizations are the ones that are represented. We are then organized in a way that we have an industry group for variable speed drives, we have one for low voltage motors, we have one for high voltage motors, and we have one for the UPSs. And if we look at the top, we have a president's board, and attached to that president's board is a technical board, and we also have a circular economy task force. This is a topic that is coming towards us in the future that also requires our attention. Then there is also a number of invited members from the organizations, the national organizations, and all in all, we have about 4, sometimes 5 meetings per year, depending on how busy the Commission is keeping us. And in the future, if need be, we will add with further task forces. Now, a little bit about the challenges, and what we have seen this morning from IHS is that we are looking into a growing business, and these are IHS figures. I have the permission to use them as well. And what we see here is that there's nice growth in the well-known traditional market like industry and renewables. These are represented by the green and the red line. But then there's a blue line that looks like a disruptor, and this is the EVs. We have seen it a couple of times this morning that EVs are going to be a reality in a big way in the coming decade. And that creates challenges and of course also a lot of opportunities. And I think the next slide is showing how dramatic it's going to be. What I have done here is I have listed the motor production worldwide. And this is again based on IHS figures. I have then taken those IHS figures and multiply it by the kilowatt per motor listed, and that's why the axis here is millions of kilowatts of produced motors for industry in the black bars. Next to that, we have then listed the same thing, millions of kilowatts of electric motors going to be manufactured in order to satisfy the demand for electric vehicles in the future. And if we do it that way, if we calculate it in kilowatts, I think we get something that is proportional to the amount of, for instance, copper in motors, metals in motors, silicon in speed drives, and so on and so forth. So what we will see is a dramatic rise in the demand for the exact same products as we, as motor manufacturers, as drive manufacturers for industry, are or have been demanding for the past few decades. So a dramatic change, and a change that we will have to cope with in industry. We have to make sure that we will get our parts in the future, and this is a work that we have started and is ongoing. There was an interview with Mr. Claus, the CEO of Infineon, a couple of weeks ago in Automobilwoche in Germany, and he stated there clearly that even with both feet on the accelerator, there's no hope that we are going to satisfy that demand from a silicon device perspective. And it could be that other industries would see it likewise. I see the copper industry is represented here today. Maybe they should invest a little bit more into these markets in the future as well. What we also will see happening in the future is that there will be a lot more spent in research on new motor designs, new inverter designs. Everything we have seen in the past has been circling around an average motor size of 0.75 kilowatts. This is why we are seeing these huge differences. The average size of the industrial motor is around 0.751 kilowatt. The assumption we have made here is that the average motor for an EV is going to be 75 kilowatt. And that of course also opens up for possibilities to have completely new motor designs introduced. And I know that in the research labs of the automotive industry there's a lot going on these days in regards to future motor designs that would be looking differently to what we have seen in the past. and also having such a huge amount of motors with an average of 75 kilowatts is an obvious opportunity to do something different from what we have seen in industry. So lots of things happening, and also quite a few challenges ahead of us. Then on the regulatory side, we also have a few challenges, and we have for the past decade we have been working a lot on making standards, European and international standards for motors and drives. They are ready and implemented. We have in that work also had very close cooperation with NEMA in the US and also with China, and we have international standards that are pretty much accepted also globally and worked according to. So what we are seeing right now from the Commission is that there's a new regulation in the pipeline. We actually have to give our comments to it within the next few days, which we will do. And what we are seeing there that at least the first draft is not regarding or not taking into account those standards. It's not based on the standards which we of course would have hoped to be the case. That would have made life easier for all of us. It would also have made relations to our organizations in the US and China a lot easier. Could even be claimed that we maybe are approaching something that could be a technical trade barrier here. But as stated, it's only a draft. We will have to discuss, and we will have to place our comments within the next few days. Overall, it is good with standards. It is very good with ambitious objectives for energy savings. However, as we saw a few minutes ago, only 10% of pumps and fans, for instance, are regulated with variable speed drive. And it is a fact, not only in theory, but in practice. You can go out and calculate it in the systems where it has been done. When you apply variable speed to typical pump and fan, sometimes also compressor systems, you will have immediate energy savings of 50%. And that is a huge potential. That is a potential, amongst others, that we have listed over here, that we are not addressing, because right now all the legislation work is concentrated around the product approach, which addresses, we believe, around 10% of the total energy savings potential. The rest is let alone and to voluntary changes. And this is, of course, a huge potential that we would have liked to attack instead. And when we have our internal meetings, we are scratching our head in regards to why is there no interest in going for the big buck. I mean, we are making a lot of work. We are spending a lot of euros on saving the cent pieces, so to speak, and at the same time we are burning the 100 euro bills because we are not looking at this huge potential of energy savings that we have right under our nose. And that is what we are working towards. This is what we are really, really trying hard again and again to get into the picture by regulation, not only by voluntary means. And that also is why we sometimes have a little bit of a hard time to look at all the excuse me, nitty-gritty that is going on in the standardization work, because it is really, really down to point something of percentage point of what is the real big potential. And I think we have, all of us, to do ourselves the favor. When we do standards, when we do legislation, it has to be relevant. Otherwise, we will sit out there with people who is suffering from the consequences afterwards, completely at loss of understanding why this has come their way. And that is what we are struggling with sometimes in our industries, and this is where we are hoping also through our comments that we maybe can get a much more proportional way of looking at this. We will no doubt discuss this further over the coming months. I think it's all due by the end of January, if I'm not wrong. Last thing on my agenda here is to talk a little bit about the circular economy, because that's also coming our way. And I didn't do that, but I could have claimed a minute ago that the biggest contributor to energy efficiency when we are talking about electrical energy efficiency is the frequency converter, and I don't even think that is challenged. I could claim also that when we look at circular economy, one of the biggest contributors in industry to reduce waste is the same device. That is also the variable speed device. When you can control your processes, or the better you can control your processes, the less waste you will have, the longer life of your equipment you will have, and I could go on with a lot more of good arguments, but there is a lot of good reasons why good control and continuous control of processes is very good for waste. Otherwise, what I have listed up here is one concern that we do have, and this is everything that is going on right now in relation to the circular economy is focused on the end user. We have in our CEMEP organization not really any products that are going to the end user. The majority is business-to-business products, and in that relation, things are working a little bit differently. We do repair a lot, we do reuse a lot already because it's a good business model, and therefore our design criteria very often are very different from what is the design criteria for the end user markets. I think this is all from my side. If you don't remember anything else, then please remember the part of keeping our standardization work very, very relevant and to some degree easy to do business with. Thank you very much.